Now we are tackling about the Second Chronicles chapter 5, where the ark is brought in to the temple. And makikita niyo rito mga kapatid, as we have seen, that the Ark of Covenant is now in the temple where Solomon finished. And when I was watching that, I couldn't help myself but to be amazed and cry to the magnitude, to the gravity of how much Solomon and David did for the house of God. At mga kapatid, yesterday I was speaking to Pastora and we were talking about we sent our tithes and offerings from London to the main church, and also me and Sister May separated our the amount that the brethren, the congregation sent for the repainting of the temple of the main church. And mga kapatid, tuwan-tuwa si Pastora. At I believe mga kapatid that when your heart is to the beautification, when your heart is on how to serve God, when your heart is on how to improve and enhance the temple of God, mga kapatid, naniniwala ako na napakalaking pagpapala sa atin yan. Palakpakan natin ang Panginoon, mga kapatid. Diyan ako lumaki, mga kapatid, sa ganyang paniniwala, sa ganyang doktrina na maganda na nagiging pagpapala tayo sa ating lalo na pag yan ay, bagamat obviously we could see that I think in the latter chapter, when I was reading the 5 and 6 of Second Chronicles, I saw that even Solomon, how alam natin mga kapatid that Solomon built the grandest, the most glorious temple a man could have built for God. But even Solomon said that this is nothing in comparison with the glory of God. At makikita natin yan mga kapatid, na bagamat napakagandang templo ang ginawa ni Solomon para sa Panginoon, pero he himself understands that that temple, no matter how grand the design is or was, it has no comparison, it's no comparable to the glory, to the cloud. When God enters into the temple, the glory of the house of God stops. It actually stops the assemblies, yung lahat ng mga ginagawa ng mga priest, ng mga tao sa temple cannot continue because the glory of God was actually in the temple of God. In chapter 5 verse 1, this is about the finished temple. Mga kapatid, maganda sa sinasabi ko sa inyo, maganda na natatapos natin ang trabaho natin sa Panginoon. All the work that Solomon had done for the house of the Lord was finished. You see, yung lagi sinasabi ko sa inyo mga kapatid, that you have to have a heart of a finishing touch. Don't just start the endeavor and be not finished. When God has asked you to do something, and this is why I'm encouraging our kabataans, our youth people. At mga kapatid, take it from me, because I am a product of God's service. Pag inuna natin, Sister Cecil, nasabi ng Panginoon, if you seek my kingdom first, all the things that you need, I will add. And I had that line that my mom and dad, Pastor and Bishop, told me, anak, you have to do this. When you do this, God will give you this. So I was conditioned to that kind of philosophy. Na kapag inuna ko ang Panginoon, kapag ibinigay ko ang lahat na para sa Panginoon, hindi tayo pababayaan ng Diyos. And this is what Solomon did. He finished. He didn't just start. He finished. Solomon brought in the things which his father David had dedicated. So it means, Sister Cecil, that yung mga design ni Solomon, marami ding mga contribution ang ginawa ni David. Marami sa mga decorations, mga decor. Maraming malaking impluensya si David sa pagtatapos sa mga ginawa ni Solomon. And then mga kapatid, in verse 6 to 10 of chapter 5, the ark comes into the most holy place of the temple. And also the King Solomon and all the congregation of Israel who were assembled with him before the ark were sacrificing sheep and oxen that could not be counted or numbered for multitude. So nung may pasok na nila yung Ark of Covenant dun sa temple, sa most holy place, sa Holy of Holies, naghanda sila ng napakaraming mga hayop, mga kapatid. Sobrang dami. Kasi pag naghahanda ka sa Panginoon, mga kapatid, hindi na natin yan, hindi mabilang sa dami ng paghahanda na ginawa ni Solomon. It was a peace. Because Solomon is a king of peace. Salem. There was a rhyme between Solomon and Salem. Melchizedek is a king of Salem. Peace, which may have come, the word shalom came from Salem. Kaya nagkaroon ng kapayapaan, mga kapatid. The priest brought in the Ark of Covenant of the Lord. The Ark of Covenant, mga kapatid, is the most important item in the temple. Kahit anong laki ng simbahan ng mga tao at wala ang presensya ng Diyos, it is nothing. Even though nasa ilalim lang ng tubo yan, nasa ilalim lang ng puno yan, but if the presence of the Lord, which is typified in the Ark of Covenant, yung Ark of Covenant, Sister Cecil, that is the presence of God. Where the Ark is, there is God. Kapag lumalakad ng mga Israelites, daladal nila yung ark, God is with them. If the ark stops, they have to stop. So mahalaga, mga kapatid, na kahit anong dami ng tao at wala naman ang presensya ng Diyos, walang kwenta. Hindi mahalaga yon. Hindi tayo nagpaparami. Bagamat masaya yung madami, pero Diyos nila nagpapadami nun, mga kapatid, sa church. May mga church na walang ginawa kundi mangisda sa mga kapwa churches. Kaya mag-iingat, mga kapatid. Yung mga nagsisimba dyan, tapos dyan mamimingwit, they are fishing in your own turf. Amen ba, mga kapatid? Kaya mag-iingat tayo sa ganyan. Bagamat hindi tayo naniniwala dyan. Kasi ang isang miyembro, Sister Arlene, pag palipat-lipat yan, dilipat talaga yan. Kailangan isa lang tayong paniniwala. Saan ka ba talaga, kapatid? Now, the house of the Lord was filled with a cloud. That is normally, pag binasa mo ang Old Testament, Sister Charmy, namimiss ka na namin sa church, sometimes called the cloud of Shekinah glory. Kapag pumasok na yung cloud, yung ulap, sa loob ng templo ng Panginoon, Sister Charmy, ang tawag doon sa English, Shekinah glory. Kaya ang ating church, ang main church, ang pangalan, Maranatha Shekinah Christian School. Amen? Maranatha Shekinah Christian School. Because it is, the definition of Shekinah, it's a Hebrew word that defines as a radiant, maliwanag na katangian ng presensya ng Diyos. Yung sobrang liwanag. Yung hindi ka makatingin sa liwanag because it's so bright that you cannot look at. That is the Shekinah glory of God. So imagine the temple, Sister Judith, the cloud enters in the temple. So they have to stop. People stop whatever they do. Ano man yung mga praise and worship na ginagawa nila, they cannot carry on because the Shekinah glory is already in there. When God enters in the temple, Sister Cecil, that is the most important person in the temple. Not the pastor, not the member, but God Himself. When He enters in the temple, it represents His character. It represents Him. Kaya, makikita mo, mga kapatid, kaya sinasabi rito that the priest could not continue ministering because of the cloud. Hindi makapagpatuloy. Kahit yung mga ginawa nilang magaganda at mga carefully planned services can be or must be suspended because God has taken over the entire building for Himself. Naalala ko yan, Sister Arlene, when I went to Qatar. I think Pastor Madeline can attest to this. Na kapag yan palang Emir Middle East, yung pinakahari nila sa Middle East, tawag nila doon Emir. Ang hari ng Qatar ang tawag Emir. Pag yung paling mamamalengke o magsha-shopping sa buong Bellagio, sarado ang mall, silang dalawa lang, silang tatlo, silang magpapamilya lang. Ang saya, di ba? Sarado ang mall, darating ang hari. Ganong kagrande ang Panginoon, Sister Chami. Pag pumasok ng Panginoon sa templo, tigil kayo lahat, wala kayong magagawa. The King is inside the temple. The King is in. So we have to respect the presence of the King. And the God that we serve, mga kapatid, is the King of Kings. He is the Emir of all the Emirs. He is the Lord of all Lords. He is the God of all gods. Kaya makikita mo kaya natutuwa ako sa ating mga kapatid ngayon na pagpupunta kayo ng church, maging maayos ng konti, magbihis-bihis ng konti, kapatid. Hindi yung galing ka pa sa car boot, dediretso ka na ng church. Amen ba, mga kapatid? Dediretso ka ng church kahit na hindi pa maayos ang damit mo. Why? You are entering the temple. Papasok ka sa templo ng Panginoon, tapos ay hindi maayos ang iyong pananamit. But do not forget, you are meeting the King of Kings. Kaya ako, mga kapatid, most of the time, ako ang namamblansya ng aking pantalon, not Sister May. Barong ko, ako namamblansya. Medyas ko, pantalon ko, nakalatagihan. Because I know I am going to meet the most VIP, the most important person. Amen, mga kapatid. Gawin nyo rin yan, mga kapatid, bilang pagpapahalaga sa Panginoon. Bagamat tama ang sabi, di namimili ang Panginoon ng kasuotan, pero you have to wear proper clothings in a proper occasion. Amen, mga kapatid. Kaya nagdadamit ako ng maayos. Amen, mga kapatid. Natatawa ako ng Sunday, Sister Cecil. May kapatiran akong binati. Kapatid, bakit yung pantalon mo butas? Kailangan yatang tahiin yan. Ay, pastor, binili ko ito ng ganito. Hindi ako tawa ko ng tawa, Sister Joyce, kasi butas-butas talaga. Amen. Kaya, mga kapatid, especially pag tatayo kayo sa unahan, you always have that kind of reverence. Yung kababaan, kasi pagpapakita ng kababaan yun sa Diyos. Yung pagbow natin sa Diyos. Yung pagkilala natin sa kataas-taas sa kaluwalhatian ng Diyos. It is important, mga kapatid. Because whatever you do now, mga kapatid, on this life, will be the exact replica of what you're gonna do in heaven. Your respect, your adoration. Kaya ito mo, maraming mga namatay, Sister Cecil, Maraming mga, in fact, as we all know, yung anak ni Aaron, namatay sila because obviously they did not respect the presence of God. Amen? There were 40 years. 40 years. Sister Cecil, nakaka-20 ka pa lang. Kung ikaw ay maglalakad papuntang Canaan, kasi ang promised land, Canaan's land yun From Egypt to Canaan's land is 40 years. Nangangalahati ka pa lang, Sister Cecil. 20 years pa ang bubunuin mo. Kaya when we read the Bible, we just read, 40 years. But understand, Sister Arlene, 40 years is 40 years. That is a long, long, long time. But Solomon understood na yung presensya ng Panginoon is always associated with a cloud. And for all those 40 years, the entirety of the journey, Sister Maribig, the presence of the Lord has always been in the cloud. Pillar of cloud during the day and pillar of fire during the night. Kaya yung presensya ng Panginoon nasa cloud. That's why Solomon said here, the Lord said He would dwell in the dark cloud. Nandoon ang presensya ng Panginoon. Sabi ni Solomon, I have surely built you an exalted house and a place for you to dwell in forever. Naramdaman ni Solomon na yung presensya ng Panginoon ay makakapanatili na sa iisang lugar. Maganda rin kasi sa buhay natin, Sister Jane, maganda rin yung merong permanency. Maganda yung may permanent address. Nakakita ka na ba si Starley sa Bicol? Sa Bicol may mga, oh naku, maraming ano dyan, nice people around. Or another abbreviation or contraction ng NPA, no permanent address. Amen? Kaya pag wala kang permanenteng address, NPA ka, kapatid. NPA ka rin, no permanent address. But Solomon said here now, in this particular context, that God has a special place for him to remain forever. Because the temple that Solomon built is a permanent temple. Nandun na sila sa promised land eh. So sabi ni Solomon, Panginoon, nandito na. Tapos na yung iyong place. Dito ka maninirahan habang buhay sa matagal na panahon. Ang templo na ginawa ni Solomon, Sister Marivic, was a clear indication that God would like to stay with His people forever. Gusto ng Panginoon kasama niya tayo habang buhay. Amen ba? Ang ganda. Pero mo, katabi mo ang Panginoon. Wala ka ng talo eh. That is the paradise of life. When you have God with you, you have everything in you. Amen ba? Kaya nung nabuhay ang Panginoon, Sister Aline, dinagdagan pa ng Diyos. Bagamat wala yung templo sa atin, so to speak, the literacy of the temple itself. But when God said, I will give you my son, Emmanuel, which means God is with you. God stays with you. So kasama natin dito, Sister Charmy, sa ating puso, ang Panginoon. Kasama natin sa ating buhay ang Panginoon. And the temple that Solomon built is just a representation that God, the eternal God, the Most High, the Sovereign God, the Creator of the heavens and the earth, would like to stay with the Israelites forever. Dito ang Israelites, dito ang templo ng Panginoon, they know that they can enter into the temple of God because God is there. Ganon din ang Panginoon. Na ngayon, nandito lang ang Panginoon sa ating puso. Kasama natin ang Diyos sa ating buhay. Ibig sabihin, Sister Cecil, committed ang Panginoon na makasama ka habang buhay. Amen ba? Huwag ka lang aalis.